My name is Kim. I'm so sick right now. Down to the pit in my stomach. A heavy weight making me tired. I realize now that I can't go on like this. Not being able to get out of bed. Not sleeping. The voices, shadows, hallucinations. Rotting from the inside. Smelling like death.
So I was on my way to work, and I just parked my truck at 6:30 in the morning, and I got a call on my cell phone, and it was the RCMP. And the RCMP asked me if I was who I was, and I said yeah, and they told me that they were with Kim and Candace, my daughters, behind the Flamingo Hotel, but that Candace wasn't really there, that Kimmy just thought she was there. And so as I'm listening to this, they said the reason that we're calling you is because your daughter, sees you all chopped up in a bush. But he says, and that's why we had to call you, because we have to make sure that you're not chopped up somewhere else. That was very disturbing to me, so I ended up going to see a counseling through the service through where I work. When I seen the counselor and I explained to him what I was going through, he just told me point blank, he said, well, what's the problem? Just change your locks.
There's Kimmy here, all dressed up. And she is there, older, graduating. She looked good in that picture. That's before everything happened. I knew she was doing some drinking when she was a teenager. One Saturday, she phoned me up early in the morning and said, Mom, I'm hallucinating. And I said, I didn't think nothing of it because I didn't know. And I said, oh, you know, kind of imagining things. Well, just hallucinating, I guess. I said, are you sure you're just not, hungover or something like that, because she was drinking. She said, I want you to take me to the hospital. And then a friend had ended up taking her. And it wasn't until later on in that day, or the very next day, that I found out that she was actually hallucinating because of drugs. And that was when I found out for sure that she was doing meth.
Well, when I saw her in the hospital, I couldn't believe that was actually my sister. I've seen on TV these people like in psych ward. It was like she was crazy. Like she didn't know who I was, and she was talking to the walls and the table and thinking there was people sitting there talking to her when they weren't, when I was sitting there. And I would sit there and I'd ask her, Kim, do you know who I am? And she would look at me and say, oh, of course I do. But she wouldn't really be looking at me. She'd be looking all around the room. But it was bad.
It pretty much started just one day out of the blue. A couple friends showed up at my house, and they were all happy-go-lucky, whatever. And I said, okay, well, if you want to do it, go ahead, right? And I was curious, so I watched them, do up the lines and stuff, and I'm like, oh, well, I looked at them and I looked at the stuff, and I knew, I heard about drugs, and I'm like, oh, well, I'll just try it. So I did one line, and it was just, that was the start of my addiction. For me, it brought me down to the crap holes of hell, pretty much. And I had psychosis, which is like hallucinations, delusions. I saw things, I heard things. I thought that I was, being watched at all times. I thought that I was going to be killed when in my sleep, so I didn't sleep. I thought that if I was home alone, that there was voices coming out of the TV, so I'd always go and unplug the TV when no one was home, just so that I'd feel better. But it wasn't. It would always, voices would come out somewhere else. If it was dark, I'd look up to the light and that big eye would form. So I was convinced that I was being watched and I was being made fun of, and I heard laughter all around me. This stump right here was my dad. This was part of his body. This right here was his head, and he had no face except for an eye. Eventually the cops came, and that's when I sort of remember what happened. They asked me what was going on, and I blacked out. I remember sitting in the cop shop by myself, no shoes, no purse, no sanity, obviously. They told me they were phoning my dad, and I still didn't get it that my dad was actually alive and I was hallucinating.
To be a drug addict, my teacher always said this: hold your breath, and soon you'll be fighting for air and nothing else matters. You know, nothing else matters. Your family doesn't matter. If you're gonna eat doesn't matter. All you're thinking about is that breath of air to make it through. Welcome to a drug addict's life, right? All they're thinking about, all I was thinking about is getting high. If I wasn't high, I was sick. If I wasn't sick, I was sore. Like I can't even describe to you the physical pain of it coming off of it. Just the lack of energy, your mentality is gone, you know, like you're stunned still, but you're so tired, you're so cranky, everything is bad. Welcome to our world, the ghetto. This is where I lived. Yeah. I lived in this place and we all called it the ghetto. People welcomed me with open arms. It felt like, you know, like it was a crowd of people. Like at any given time could be 7, could be 12 people in this little 1-bedroom apartment getting high, and anything could have happened. I've been bear sprayed. I've been in a mist of people fighting that are drug-induced fights, right? Somebody has no problem shooting your toe off because you owe them $20 for a crack coot. You know what you're doing is wrong. Like, I've been taught right from wrong, right? I knew that stealing is wrong, and I knew that sleeping with these guys is wrong. Like, I knew it was all wrong, and I would have those moments, and I would sit there, and I would just, it would be so clear that I knew what I was doing was wrong. But how do you stop? How do you stop? I have a room full of people that are smoking gack around me, and how do you stop? Right? Like, that moment of clarity just goes, and it's a puff in the air. You forget about it, right? Those feelings don't disappear, you just mask them. You just hide them.
I've been zombie scared, angry, wanting to die. I've dug holes in my arms, not feeling a thing. This nightmare I've created by choice.
Well, she was definitely suicidal, yeah. She was suicidal to literally where she got to the point where she was going to do one of the 3 that all using addicts do. She was either going to die, get arrested, or end up in a psycho ward. She was losing herself to the addiction, and she knew that. She had lost most of herself to the addiction. She'd gotten to the point where she had to make a choice.
I've been losing my soul, and the speed demon has me choked. I'm a nut job who still doesn't think quitting is my savior. I took my own personal rock bottom. Suicide didn't work. Doing harm to myself didn't work.
Until June 12th, 2005, I chose life. The fact that I am reading this letter a year later means I'm alive. My name is Kim, and I'm a recovering crystal meth addict.
Addiction is a disease of isolation. Isolation meaning that they've learned how to protect themselves from their pain so well that they've created barriers for themselves in whatever way they do, you know, and then they just hide behind those barriers. And it's our job to find a chink in the barrier, to find a way to get through to them so that it crumbles. And once it crumbles, then we're here to walk beside them, hold them up until they can gain their own footing.
1 year.
Oh, yeah, don't forget me.
Basically, I had nowhere to go. I had no friends, no money, no sanity. And my mom said, okay, well, you can detox on my couch. I felt like I was falling through her couch. I was so messed up, and I was so scared, and I called every recovery place my parents had given me, and I begged to get in because I just had no other options, and I felt like I was going to die.
Well, I remember when you first came in. Don't you remember that you had to have the answer for absolutely everything, and you covered all that pain inside you with yak, 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 remember?
I think I still do that.
Do you? Is it to cover your pain still, though?
I noticed when I got mad or sad or anything like that that I felt like I needed to use drugs to numb myself so that I didn't feel anything.
Still got some feelings about that? What's going on?
I cried all the time. Childford House with their rules and their step work and their just the way they talk to you, they got a lot of stuff out of me and they changed my behavior.
Talk about that. Remember, you used to come into the office and sit down on the floor and cry. Remember that? And you just wanted to be loved. You know, and I know that your family loved you, but it was just that need for acceptance, and you were just so hurting, weren't you?
One of the things that Kim did when she was here was write a letter to herself. And the purpose of that letter to herself is to come back and when she's a year clean and sober and read that. And in that letter is basically what got her here, the desperation and the pain, and what she hopes to gain when she leaves Chalford House.
You can come back after you've been a year clean and read the letters to the group yourself, or I'll read the letters. And these letters...
Now the other part of that group is a group I do from time to time also, and it's very intense because I read the letters. They don't get to come back and do that. I read the letters, and either the women have relapsed and gotten lost again, nobody knows where they are, or they've died and we've gone to their funerals.
The worst part of it is that some of them don't make it back, and I get to read the letters, and some of them are dead.
And I crumple the letters up and I throw them on the floor saying, you know, well, she's dead.
She would do it with such force that it would almost feel like she was punching us in the heart every time, because these letters were written by real people, right? And these people died. You know, they OD'd or they killed themselves or something, right?
They don't make it back.
I kept telling myself that's not going to be me, because I don't want to have my letter read to another group of girls who are trying to get better and I'm dead when she's reading it out loud. I'm not there to read it myself.
Okay. Being here while Kim read her letter made me think about my own recovery. In the recovery house, I was able to deal with a lot of my guilt, right? Because there was so much guilt afterwards, and the guilt just kept piling up, and it was just easier to get high because I didn't want to think about the things that I had done wrong, the people that I had hurt, you know, like stealing cars, for example. I stole a car with a friend, and I had money in my pocket for gas. I was in a car that ran out of gas. I stole another car, and as we were driving, I looked behind me, and there's 2 car seats sitting in the back, right? And now I think about that, and shame on me. Like, somebody woke up and had a really bad day, probably, right? But I just did what I had to do, and that's the life and times of a drug addict. I believe that every addict does have a Maine and Hastings in their head, a Skid Row, the rock bottom. It was the most scariest thing that I've ever had that I did, you know, like to walk downtown and seeing people flail out and just, you know, like I thought that I had seen it pretty bad in the ghetto, right? But it's nothing like downtown. It scares me to think that I could have made it down there because I'm not invincible, and that very possibly could have been my last stop until death. My recovery to me now is so precious. To walk down the recovery path, it
so many miracles happen every day that, you know, blows my mind, and it would be things that I'd miss if I was using still.
I'm gonna be an addict for the rest of my life, but I'm gonna be a recovering addict. There's something different, right? And you know, I've always wanted a tattoo, and I got a tattoo about a month ago that says Serenity on it, and I got my clean date engraved on my body for the rest of my life.
Yeah, no, I've got some cream here for you and stuff too, so I don't know what you use to heal that other one.
I just use Vaseline on it. I've had constant reminders, and I have everyday triggers, so every day that I feel like I want to go out and use, I can just remember what I have tattooed on me. It helps me get through the day, helps me get through the week if I need it, and I know that it will also help other people who maybe see it, that I am in recovery, I am a drug addict in recovery, and you know what, you don't always have to feel like crap for being one, because people do survive and people do get through it, and there's always positive things with every negative as long as you work hard and have faith in yourself to do that. That's what it means to me. Other words I want are courage, pain, surrender, all representing recovery for me as well, and then getting them all circled around my back, and then eventually get something in the middle that's big. I don't remember a lot of things that I did, and I know I said a lot of things, and I know I acted out, but that's the dope. You know, you can sit in front of me now and have a conversation with me, and I'm not going to be looking over my shoulder and freaking out, right? I mean, if you want me to, I can, but I'm not going to do it, right? It's not going to be drug-induced, right? And, you know, how is that possible if recovery doesn't work, right? How is that possible that somebody who was just like almost Riverview client material could end up being so normal? Right? But have a message of recovery and a message to help somebody. Oh, that hurts so tender.
What happened to Kim? We think she left a little too early, for one thing.
Hi, Kim. How you doing?
And I think it had a lot to do with going to school right away, getting jobs, doing all of those things right away, too soon. And she was still too close to her addiction, and then her ego got in the way again, and she became lost once more.
You need to get back on track, or I have fear. I have concern for you that we're not going to see you much at all, and then you're just going to fade away, and we're going to lose you.
Relapse happens. I mean, it's like Colleen says, it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be, but it is part of recovery, although it doesn't have to be. And people that don't relapse are very fortunate. Unfortunately, most people do relapse. But then again, it's another time for teaching. You know, if you can say to yourself, like we talked to Kim about that, you know, you say to yourself, okay, this is a lesson. This is something that I've learned. This is something new that was put in my path. I needed to relapse to be able to dig this little bit out here so that I could learn about that and then take that away again. You know, relapse is not the end. Relapse can be the beginning.
Kim, put your hand out. Come on, put your hand out. It's okay to cry.
Life is a series of surrenders for all of us. You know, we do really well and then we don't do well. So we got to pick ourselves up, surrender to that, and go on again. It's really difficult for addicts to do that because of the shame and the guilt and all of those feelings, all of those barriers and those walls that they've built. You know, it's a little different for people who, what we call normies. Normies tend to be able to do that a lot easier. People who become addicted don't.
It's a beautiful place out here. Now rollerblading to me is just a relaxing activity, and how do I stay clean? I guess just a determination that I have, and I can't let that go. So I'm not going to. I'm not gonna let go what I know that I can have for something that's just a momentary experience that destroys your life in the end. So, you know, if I'm having a bad day, I'll get on the phone and I'll call somebody that I know will be there. Or, you know, I'll talk to my parents, because family is like really important. Just take it one day at a time. That's the thing that's the key. You just take it one day at a time, because If you start going too far in the future, you'll start stressing yourself out, and so many different things can happen. And today I have a choice to say no. Before, when I was using, it grabbed a hold of me and I couldn't say no. So now I have that choice and I'm in control. So